Hey there everybody, it's RevKev here. One of the regular features that I'm going to be doing here on my YouTube channel is something that I'm calling RevKev Nitpicks the Movies. You see, one of the things that I have always done ever since I was a little kid is nitpick movies. Now, I'm not a negative person, I'm not a critical person. For me, nitpicking a movie really is just about getting into the nitty-gritty details of a movie. It's just something that me and my friends have always loved to do. We would go see a matinee on a Saturday afternoon, and then we would all, just run to like a restaurant or to a coffee shop and just spend the next 2-3 hours there just nitpicking all the little details, how this story fit into this and how that kind of went in with that, and just kind of really unpacking the story. You see, as a guy who loves a good story and a guy who loves telling a good story and unpacking a story, this is just a great way for me to enjoy movies. Now, it does happen occasionally in my nitpicking of a movie, I find something and it can actually kill the movie for me. It doesn't happen often, but in this very first kind of episode of RevKev Nitpicks the Movies, I'm going to talk about a nitpick. And this is a little detail from a movie that most of my geek friends and Star Wars friends loved, but at the movie, I just couldn't get into it, predominantly because of this little nitpick. So I want to talk a little bit today about the movie Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, and so let's nitpick this one together. The biggest thing for me that when it comes to nitpicking this had so many great things, and I wanted to go into this movie loving it. I really did. I loved The Force Awakens. I was blown away by it, saw it tons of times. I was really excited about kind of these new stories, these back-end stories about the rebellion and the Empire, and putting stuff back into that original trilogy timeline. I was thrilled. Loved some of the new characters introduced. Loved director Krennic. Loved K2SO. Saw Gerrera. Was pretty cool to kind of see what they did with him after his appearances in the Clone Wars. So it had some really great stuff that I was really excited about. But here's where my nitpicking into the story, getting under the hood, getting deep into the story, kind of finding all the little things in it. This is what happened to me. I want to nitpick the intentional weakness put into the Death Star by Galen Erso. You see, Galen Erso was kind of the key scientist who kind of oversaw the construction of the Death Star, and he gets a message out to his daughter, Jyn. And in his message, he says that he pretended to be kind of this beaten down man and just giving in to the whim of the Empire, but throughout that whole time was intentionally laying a trap, that he intentionally put a weakness into the Death Star. And he states, and I'm quoting here, where he says, a pressurized explosion in the reactor system. So this a pressurized explosion in the reactor system would cause the whole thing to be destroyed. Now, what's interesting about this is nowhere outside of this hologram message that goes to Jyn does anyone else hear the details of the weakness. I'd have to go back and watch it again to make sure of this, but I really don't feel like going back and watching this again. So I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, put it in the comments below, but I don't think anyone else knew the specific details of the reactor core causing the whole thing to go down. So when the Rebel Alliance finally gets their hands on the plans, and their technicians go through the plans, like was kind of presented by General Dodonna in A New Hope, where he says, a detailed analysis of the plans provided by Princess Leia have discovered a weakness in the battle station. I think that's a direct quote. I've seen that one a few times. So that's kind of cool. So it fits. It fits in that they didn't know what the weakness was. They just heard that there's a potential weakness. They need to study it. They found the weakness, and they say, we got to get a proton torpedo into this shaft that is 2 meters wide. It's ray shielded. That way you can't shoot laser bolts into it. And it's going to be very difficult. In fact, the attitude of the pilots, and even the best pilots in the room, is not that this is going to be difficult. It's that it's going to be impossible, right? And then Luke goes, that's not possible. I do this stuff all the time. I bullseye womp rats in my T-16 back home. They're no greater than 2 meters, right? So they set up all of this stuff. So the rebels get the plans, they study the plans, and they find the weakness in the plans. But the weakness in the Death Star was intentionally built. This weakness was intentionally put into it. Now, I realize this is a nitpick, But this is what I do. Let's nitpick this together. The problem I have with the weakness of the Death Star being intentionally built is, for me, it takes away the character. It takes away from the character of Luke Skywalker. It just completely takes away from the character of Luke Skywalker. You see, we have to remember that Star Wars is not about the rebellion versus the Empire. It's not about the Resistance versus the First Order. It's not a movie about war. It's a movie about a hero. It's ultimately a story about the Skywalker family. It's the story of Anakin Skywalker. It's the story of the Skywalker family. It's the Skywalker saga. The backdrop to the story is a war. So the war is the backdrop to the story of these characters in the war. The story is not the war. The story is the characters. The war is the backdrop. It's the setting for these characters, at what shapes them, at what drives them. And what George Lucas was intentionally getting at was the fact that there were no more Jedi. All throughout The New Hope, this was implied in so many different ways in all the dialogue. Governor Tarkin said this to Darth Vader: the Jedi are extinct. There are no more of them. Obi-Wan Kenobi, reaffirms this to Luke Skywalker, that there are no more Jedi. And it's really only the Jedi that would be able to overthrow the Emperor and Vader. See, no matter what the rebellion does to the Empire, the rebellion will never be able to deal with Darth Vader. They'll never be able to deal with the Emperor. It's a story about a hero that has to come back. The New Hope. It's Luke Skywalker, right? And making the weakness in the Death Star intentional, making it an intentional weakness, for me, takes away that magic of who Luke is. See, no one could have done it. Only a Jedi could have blown up the Death Star. It needed to be a Jedi. See, for Galen Erso to build an intentional weakness that only a Jedi could handle is ludicrous, because there are no more Jedi. Galen Erso would have had to have built something that he knew his buddy like Saw Gerrera could take care of, or his daughter could take care of, or the rebellion could take care of. Why build a weakness that only the Jedi could take care of? That would be pointless, right? So it takes away from who Luke is. See, and George Lucas was very intentional in that final scene in A New Hope. Like, I've seen interviews with him dozens of times where he talks about, like, when Luke is flying down the trench in his X-Wing fighter, what he does is, first off, he blows up R2-D2, right? Gets rid of R2-D2, right? There's no help from the droid. And then he gets this impression Luke is communing with the spirit of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then Luke turns off his targeting computer. And everyone back on the Yavin base is freaked out. Like, what are you doing? Put your computer back on. And Luke's like, no, I'm all right. I got this. Because he just is feeling there's something else going on. There's a different war. There's a different thing happening here with Luke. He's stepping into this Jedi Knight. Vader senses it right away. Vader senses that, oh my goodness, like, the Force is strong with this one. What's going on? He can sense this power. He thinks he's about, Darth Vader's about to blow him up. Han Solo comes in, gets Vader out of the way. Luke takes this 1,000,000-to-1 shot that no one could have done. No one should have been able to pull this off. And he does. Death Star explodes, huge celebration. Making that weakness intentional, that no one could have accomplished, breaks the story of Rogue One for me. It makes Rogue One pointless. It makes the death of the characters who I was enjoying them, makes their sacrifice pointless, because for me, this nitpicking of this little tiny point actually causes the story to crumble and to fall apart for me. Now again, normally my nitpicking doesn't do that, but for this one it did, because I just wanted it to tie in and to just fit in so much better. And it left me disappointed. But anyway, so this is my kind of thought here today. So what do you think? Do you think it's a big deal that Galen Erso intentionally built the weakness? Did you like that? Do you feel it fit? Would love to know what you think in the comments below. Let's continue to nitpick these movies together and have lots of fun while we do it. So this was RevKev, and if you enjoy this content, please click the subscribe button, click that link, click the notification bell, and be part of the conversation. Would love to go on this journey together. So take care, and we'll talk to you soon.